Hello everybody, just before we start the video, experimental for Arma Reforger has been updated to 1.7, so there's a lot of features there and a few things like playable FIA, playable FIA, and a few things that's changed, and a lot of updates and fixes for console, particularly for the Xbox mainly. I know the devs are working on the PlayStation because it's two separate systems, Microsoft for Xbox, Sony for PlayStation, so very different things. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that this video is not about 1.7. The things that have come to 1.7 have not been discussed for 1.7. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to put that out. That yeah, I know 1.7's out. Might do a video, hopefully gameplay soon. Enjoy the video and the real intro. Welcome back to another Arma Reforger video. Today we're talking about what could be coming next for Arma Reforger. And a quick disclaimer before we get into it, this is all speculation mainly. Nothing here is official or anything like that. It is based on what I've seen around the community, what people want in YouTube comments and on social medias and that, and forums, you know, like Reddit, for example. Ugh, I hate Reddit. Anyway, and also what's left on the roadmap. Some of this has already been addressed by Reforger devs at BI. Some of it is planned or out of scope or whatever they've said, but you know, there's still plenty to talk about at that as well. They've surprised us before. I'm going to split this video into two parts. First, we'll go over the roadmap and what's left and how the devs have surprised us before by stuff not being on the roadmap and yada yada yada. And then we'll look at the community and what the community wants in the next major update for Forger. So, the roadmap was last updated on October 30th, 2025. Alongside the 1.6 update, which also skipped the 1.5 to where 1.5 and 1.6 were combined into just 1.6. That update brought quite a lot. The operational mega campaign, a reworked conflict mode with conflict HQC, new weapons and equipment, a Kolgiev map, and more. Right now, the roadmap is nearly complete. Ground support and air assault are both finished for the roadmap. That only leaves final strike of the roadmap, which specifically is the electrical system. From what we know, this system could allow players to disrupt and restore power across the map through different distribution points spread across the map. That could add a whole new layer of gameplay, especially for coordinated team plays and tactics and strategy. Personally, I think the electrical system will come in the next major or even the final major update for Reforger, and if previous updates are anything to go by, we could see some extras added alongside it. Kolgiev and Operation Omega campaign were both big surprises for the community that weren't mentioned on the roadmap at all. So there's a good chance the devs might have something else planned that we're not expecting. Though I just speculate because the devs surprised us before and I expect them to surprise us again maybe. Now, this next section is what the community wants, what I've seen, kind of a little stash of what I might want. So let's talk about that. I've seen a lot, especially some content creators, requests for things like bolt action sniper rifles and also more vehicles, so I'll focus on just those two elements. So with bolt action rifles, starting with that, you've got the 1989 setting of Reforger, and to keep that I've done a little bit of research to try keep it as accurate to that 1989 setting Reforger is based on. So for the US or NATO side, or Blue 4, the main option would be the M40 rifle. This is typically used with something like a 3 to 12 times scope. that's really the only fitting choice I could find that makes sense for the game, but also I can see how much that would change gameplay, especially for snipers. You know, those who are mainly playing on modded servers will actually come over to vanilla just because of that one change. Then on the Soviet side, you've got the Mosin Nagant with the PU 3x scope. Yes, I know. Is there nothing else? No, actually there isn't, because by 1989, that had mostly been replaced from frontline service by the SVD, which is already in game. So you can kind of see the issue here. The M40 would likely well outperform the Mosin Nagant in a lot of situations. You know, the Mosin Nagant with a 3x scope versus the M40 with a 3.2 12 times scope. There's a lot there. So I can see why the devs could be, not interested or wary of adding bolt-action rifles, because you add just the M40, people will complain that, oh, you didn't add a bolt-action rifle for Soviets. But you never know. That said, we know balance isn't always the top priority in Reforger. War isn't fair, and honestly, I think that's part of what makes the game interesting. Vehicles. Now, let's move on to that, and there are a lot of options here, really, when I was doing research. So, especially for the Soviets, because there's vehicles from all the way back then still being used and blown away in turret tossing competitions now. If you know what I mean by that, you had a good laugh, hopefully. If not, okay, you didn't get it. But since many of their vehicles from that time are, still used today, I've picked a few that I think the community would like to see and that could realistically fit into the game. So, the least likely are light tanks. Yeah, I know. Didn't think I was going to discuss light tanks. So, it's the least likely category of vehicle that'll be introduced into Reforger. The US, you've got the M551 Sheridan. This was used in Operation Just Cause, which lines up with the 1989 setting, because that operation took place in 1989. It also has the capability of firing an ATGM. Yeah, a wire-guided anti-tank missile, which is actually called the Sheila, or Sheila. That's Irish, by the way. Look it up. For the Soviets, there's the PT-76. A lot of you should be well aware of what the PT-76 brings. Both of these are actually amphibious as well, so which could be very interesting for gameplay, and also how they deal with certain situations, which is interesting. And the fact that we already have a few amphibious vehicles anyway, so even that these are unlikely, and the simple reason that they're still tanks and are making them unlikely at the end of the day. These things can engage targets at around 1.5 kilometers away. The Sheridan alone can fire its ATGM at a maximum range of 3,000 meters. It's 3 kilometers, guys. 3 kilometers. Do you think that's capable of going there, considering the size of the maps we're operating on currently? That thing could just dominate Kolgiev if you stick it up on Flagstaff, on the Flagstaff hill. Whatever that freaking, the tallest point on Kolgiev. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, brain fart moment. Bad script writing as well, I know. That kind of firepower might be a bit much for Reforger. So, yeah. There's also IFVs, which is more likely than tanks. Which is, by the way, if you don't know what an IFV is, it's an infantry fighting vehicle, and I chose the BMP-2 and the M2 Bradley. Both were in service by the 1980s and were technically relatively new at the time. The BMP-2 saw combat in places like Afghanistan and Angola. The Bradley made its combat debut actually during Operation Desert Storm in '91, where it was actually very effective. In fact, it destroyed more armoured vehicles than the Abrams in that conflict. Yikes. That being said, in later wars, things like IEDs and RPGs proved to be serious threats to the Bradley. These vehicles would fit really well into Reforger and add more depth without completely breaking balance. Though, of course, I'm going to repeat it, war ain't fair. Now we've got APCs, or Armoured Personnel Carriers, which are most likely, in my opinion, on the US side, the M113. This vehicle has been around since the Vietnam War and saw a lot of use, especially by the ARVN, who used it as a ACAV role with an M2 Browning on it, and it performed well early on, but its weaknesses showed pretty quickly, especially against mines. Over time, upgrades were made, leading to variants like the M113A3 in the late 80s, which is the most likely variant that we'd see in Reforger. On the Soviet side, we had the BTR-50. This dates back to, obviously, the 1950s, and had multiple variants, including one with heavier weapons and improved protection. It first saw combat during the Hungarian Revolution of 1956 and was used in many conflicts after that. By the 1980s, it had mostly been replaced by vehicles like the BMP-1 and BMP-2, but it would still make sense in reserve or rear line roles. So, that's basically the video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that these options are like something you would like to see in Reforger? Do you have something else better in mind? Put it in the comments down below. Let me know. And tell me, what would you like to see in the next major update for Arma Reforger? Even if it's something unlikely. My name is James Chase 97 Gaming. Or just James. I'll see you around in the next video. Thanks for joining me. Leave a like, comment down below, and maybe even share this video around to your friends, your family, your cats and your dogs and your fish. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the weekend for a stream, or maybe in the next video.